Okay, hun.
Okay.
How long has it been since your last Diet Coke?
Maybe an hour.
Okay, so we gotta make this quick. You can't go too long without
Hey, now.
an infusion.
Yeah, that's true.
All right,
I'll own that.
let's get going.
Okay.
Welcome to What We Really Want, conversations about connection. Settle in and get ready for a great conversation. Let's talk about what we really want.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of What We Really Want. Stacey and I are getting ready to have a conversation. Hey, baby.
Hey.
Nice to be sitting here in our studio. Hopefully, other than us coming off of chest and sinus congestion,
Yes.
everything else about the episode hopefully will sound good. This is number 28. It's called Happy Anniversaries, and we'll get into why we call it that in just a couple of minutes. Before we get started with the conversation, though, if you're listening to this when it first comes out, it's the first week of January. Coming up towards the end of the month, we have our next Roots Retreat Women's Workshop on January the 24th and 25th. That is our 2-day workshop for women who are seeking recovery from sexual betrayal trauma.
And as of today, we still have some spots available.
We do. So you can go to awakenrecovery.com and click on the intensives and workshops link. You can get all the information on that.
And if you want to hear more, you can go
back to episode 17.
Episode 17, and we have some ladies on the podcast with us that have been to the workshop, and we talk a lot about it, so that could be helpful.
That's right. Yeah. So definitely check that out. Check out awakenrecovery.com. Check out previous episodes of the podcast. We're kicking off a new year and would love to have y'all telling your friends about us. So thanks for joining us now. It's episode 28. It's called Happy Anniversaries. And here it comes right now.
Happy New Year.
Here we are on January 1st. We stayed up till the super late hour of about 10 p.m.
Yep. At 9 o'clock, you said.
Close enough.
And you put the dogs to bed.
Well, normally we stay up till about 11 and we watch the Times Square ball drop. And then once it's 2000 or once it's the new year somewhere in America, that's good enough for us and we go to bed. But this year it was just not that important. I mean, it's never that important, but this year it wasn't that important, especially because we're still getting over being sick, as you can probably tell from listening to us.
Yes. Cold, crud.
All through Christmas.
I used to never get sick. I hardly ever do get sick, actually.
Well, as Mike Rowe says all the time, we're as old as we've ever been.
That's right.
And things change.
That's right.
Well, we decided that we were going to sit down this first week of the year and record an episode that we're calling Happy Anniversaries, plural, because the first week of January holds a couple of anniversaries for us, right? So the first one we'll get to is on the 4th.
Yeah.
That's our wedding anniversary,
Yep.
January 4th, 1992. So number 33. And then the next anniversary that hits is 2 days later, on January 6th. We affectionately in recovery call Fan Day,
Yeah.
which is the day that it hits the fan, because that happened in 2009. And so January 6th, 09, so coming up on 16 years.
Crazy.
Have you found this to be true? Like it seems like it's not an uncommon thing at all for people in recovery to have things blow up on or around their anniversary.
Oh, yeah. Or a birthday or Valentine's Day.
So
or
many
there's
people
like
on Valentine's Day.
A special day. I mean, it's not like the husband's purposefully letting it out on those holidays, but it's because I have the thought of, can you just not do it on another day? Like,
Right.
not a special day, but that wouldn't be any better. So I tell ladies all the time, like, I know that it's awful, but it wouldn't actually be better if it was a different day.
Is it better or worse, or is it just a thing? Like that when something devastating or traumatic happens on an anniversary.
Yeah. Well, it does kind of
Or is it just a thing?
It probably is just a thing, but I think it ruins, let me say it this way. Our anniversary was January 4th. So that's a fun day, sweet memories, typically what an anniversary is. If I had found out on that day, I don't know that it's any more ruined because it's basically near our anniversary.
I guess I'm kind of thinking about what was the type of relationship we had with our anniversary prior to all this.
True.
And was it a healthy thing or was it an unhealthy thing?
Yeah.
Because I feel like at the time, an unrecovering sex addict for the first 17 years we were married, whether it was birthdays or holidays or anniversaries, the addict brain was like, okay, this is just an opportunity to have sex.
Yeah.
I think, whether it was the anniversary, anytime we traveled, got a hotel room, and both of us had that anticipation. For me, it was perceived as a good anticipation. For you, I think it was just anxiety.
Yeah, some anxiety, but also as the kids were growing up, I think it was one of the times where it was that, maybe I could enjoy it more because we didn't have the kids around.
Because we were away.
We were away, and it was a little more fun being at a hotel or I remember one year we got a cabin.
Yeah, I guess I'm just thinking my relationship with our anniversry was not healthy.
No.
Of course, my relationship with how I looked at most anything back in those days wasn't healthy. And I'm almost drawing a parallel between our wedding anniversary and like the significance that people will put on New Year's resolutions.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's some magic day.
Well, and I remember before D-Day, people would put things about their anniversaries and put like 15 years of wedded bliss or, and it always bothered me because before recovery, because I think I maybe was jealous. Maybe they were having wedded bliss, but I sure wasn't having wedded bliss. I mean, I didn't know so much, and we had a decent marriage. We got along, and we've always been best friends. We've always we haven't fought a ton, but when we did, it was, it would deteriorate. So that always bothered me that they would put that. And then since recovery, I'm just like, if you're living authentically with one another and you're showing up honest and vulnerable and all the things we're learning in recovery, then it's not going to be easy. It's going to be rough. And I would say I'm happier and more satisfied in our marriage than I've ever been. And it has been rough.
Not so much
Not
lately.
all the time, but like especially early on, yes. And then, we're in a good rhythm now, I feel like. I remember, though, just the other day, I think when we were putting down the Christmas stuff, you said something in a way, it's like that tone that we kind of talk about a lot and joke about. But I was so annoyed, and man, I was slamming some doors. Because I
didn't
was
even
just
notice.
frustrated, and I had to let it out. But then the thing that I noticed is, okay, I'm sad that we're taking it all down. I mourn and grieve at the end of Christmas.
Right.
I'm so ready to get my house clean and decluttered and all, because it begins to feel like clutter. But anyway, I rebounded very quickly. I realized what it was, and I didn't even need to tell you. But I remember being like so annoyed, and I slammed a couple doors. The child still shows up.
When we were talking about doing this episode today to talk about anniversaries, not only wedding, but also, fan day and recovery markers, we didn't really have a whole lot of specific structure of what we wanted this conversation. In fact, we don't have anything written down at all. We're just talking. But one of the things you just said in terms of like showing up as a little kid, that little girl, we, over the past several years, have come to understand a lot more about child consciousness and how so many times when we as adults are interacting with each other, it's easy to forget that like when we get emotionally triggered, we can revert. And the person who's showing up for this conversation now or this argument now is not 54-year-old Greg or 53-year-old Stacey. It's a much, much younger version because the thing that happens sometimes when we get triggered, that reminds you of harshness, which is how I used to show up a lot.
Yeah.
But even before that, even before we ever met each other, harsh tones had an effect on you because of being around anger when you were a little girl. That was triggering for you.
Yeah.
And so any kind of tone that reminds your body, your nervous system of that is gonna bring the kid back.
Well, and the tone too, just to interject, it could be, it's not necessarily always anger, obvious anger, but it's a tone that I think the biggest trigger for me is when anything is said where I immediately have that feeling of, oh, I'm stupid. That is the bigger, like, maybe the shame that is immediately there. It's if I don't feel smart. So I think,
which is interesting to acknowledge or to understand, because it would be easy to say, oh, well, what's going on here is you're using a tone that's rude.
right.
So you're the problem.
Right.
You need to stop doing that.
Exactly.
But what happens in you when either I use the tone or when you think you hear the tone? Because sometimes it's one and sometimes it's the other. I mean, there have been times that you've asked me about the tone, and like I couldn't be further from irritation or whatever it was that you were picking up on. And if the focus is just on don't use that tone more than what does it do in me when I hear or perceive that tone. And so,
well, you're never going to be able to, it's not like there's this one tone and you just don't do it, because it's not really the tone.
Yeah.
It's dependent on what's going on in me and how that thing hits me. And so, yeah, I mean, sometimes if you do say you're annoyed or I did hear a tone, I think usually you say it's not really about me. But rather than actually that making me feel worse to know that I was right, it validates that I actually picked up on something.
And gosh, how much time over how many years did we waste arguing about, well, you said that. No, I didn't. You had this tone. No, I didn't. Yeah, that's not what I said. I said this. Oh, I wish I had a recording so I could prove it to you. Blah, blah, blah.
Say that how many times? Well, we both said it.
Yeah. And oh my gosh, just the noise and the weeds and, what we've learned how to call all of the stuff that's not really the point.
Because when we go to counseling, the way our counselors work, some may not do this, but ours, we don't even talk about who did the right thing and the wrong thing. And sometimes I'm kind of annoyed about it.
Because it isn't about that.
It's not about that, but I so sometimes want it to be. But it's not helpful even to just say, okay, well, you were right and you were wrong, if you don't understand what was going on.
Yeah. Well, it's easy also, I think, us sitting here a few days before our wedding anniversary, it would be easy to kind of divide it into two time periods. Our marriage before Fan Day and recovery and our marriage since then. And yes, those are two major components. There was a big line of demarcation because our first marriage died and we began to build a healthy one. But it's not just those two, because even in the last few years, you and I have come to realize that there was more work to do, and thought maybe it would be a good thing to talk about that some, because you talked about when we go to therapy, we for a long time didn't, and just in the last couple of years have started doing that, and to really some great results, some great benefit that we've had in our relationship.
And I don't think it was we refused to go or we don't need therapy. It just was like, you're doing your work, I'm doing my work, and I guess we just realized we probably have more work to do.
Well, you realized before I did,
True.
Right? And I think that was one of the things that we kind of have come to understand or be able to name, have words for, the attachment style that both of us bring into our relationship, and how yours is more anxious and towards you, mine has always been more avoidant. And the way that I think was showing up for us is, for me, in the absence of anything quote unquote wrong, in the absence of any big conflict, we were fine.
Yeah.
We were doing good. And then with you being kind of emotionally hypervigilant, always waiting for the other shoe to drop, you picked up much more on the sense of, we're not bad, but it doesn't feel like we're as good as we could be.
Yeah. Because in recovery, we had gotten to a place where still we didn't fight very much, and we did fight more healthily, but we still would go, I say, off the reservation. I would just, at some point, I couldn't hang on anymore, and I just lost it, which is kind of the way I function when I'm really backed in a corner. I just kind of go crazy. So that was kind of where I knew it's like, this isn't right. And I think for me, being the one that would get real activated and obviously looking like the loon in the scenario, I always thought it was me, that I was the problem. But then it's like, I know that there's two people here, so I don't think it's just all me. So anyway, I think there was something there that I would talk about. But like you said,
I had a high sensitivity to when you would get activated.
Yeah.
And I did not like that. So if me showing up, being vulnerable, telling you what I was thinking, feeling, risked bringing up that kind of reaction in you, then the easier thing for me was just not to talk to you about stuff like that. Because if I could rationalize and say, well, nothing's happening, I'm not doing anything, I haven't been slipping or relapsing, I've just been noticing this feeling. I mean, I know that for a long time, any time that I felt sad, that really triggered you, you know, and I didn't like that because to me, it felt like my emotional experience getting hijacked. It's like, can I even be sad without feeling like now I have to slip into taking care of you and making you not scared because I'm sad? You know, there's a lot of that going on. And so for me, the easiest way to deal with it was to not deal with it just through not sharing things with you.
Right.
You know?
So the occasional times you did, I think that I'm not saying that's why I did it and it's your fault, but you didn't do it very often. So when you did, I think for me, all those things that were the insecure attachment, freaking out, like what's wrong or different that you're now feeling this.
Yeah. And it wasn't my job to build your resilience.
Right.
But by not bringing my authentic self to you in times that I felt like my authentic self would stoke anxiety, I wasn't allowing the opportunity for you to feel what that felt like and then therefore make the choice to do your work and have resilience built. You know?
And when you would share something and I would get anxious, all my focus was on why are you anxious? Like what's wrong and what's happening, what's different. So I didn't see.
You mean like why am I whatever emotion I was feeling?
Yeah, whatever emotion you were sharing. I'm like all my energy and everything was focused on why you were even feeling that, rather than why is this freaking me out? Why am I not able to handle his emotions? Why is it all about me? You know, it becomes all about me. So I didn't have words or know that was, I needed to be focusing more on like understanding why that was the thing. Because I think I was still looking to you for things to be okay.
Well, I think that what wasn't happening was either of us showing up confidently in our authentic self, whatever that happened to look like at the moment, trusting if that prompts or catalyzes some kind of reaction in the other person, that's not something that I need to try to be in control of.
Right. And it's not necessarily a bad thing.
It's not necessarily a bad thing. And it might feel bad, but that doesn't mean that it is bad.
Yeah.
And what does it feel bad? Even it feels uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable.
We'll be right back.
How have things gotten so out of control? How did something that didn't seem like such a big deal at first completely take over? Porn and sex addiction are destroying your life and killing your relationships. You know you can't keep going on like this, keeping secrets and telling lies. Something has to change. But how? Most men who struggle with unwanted or addictive sexual behavior have tried to fix it on their own. But sex addiction is powerful and complicated. Recovery is possible, but it isn't easy. It requires us to focus on more than just behavior. It requires us to look at our whole lives and the parts of our stories that contribute to addiction. If you're ready to find freedom, maybe it's time for you to get to the roots. The Roots Retreat is a 4-day therapeutic and spiritual intensive. You'll work with therapists and coaches who specialize in sex addiction and recovery. You'll learn how to take healthy ownership of your behavior. You'll discover how your life experiences set the stage for addiction to develop. You'll see how God factors into your struggle, and you'll learn effective tools for ongoing recovery after the retreat. If you're ready to stop trying what doesn't work, if you're ready to experience real hope, healing, and change, let's get to the roots.
Visit awakenrecovery.com/rootsretreat or click the Roots Retreat link in show notes. And this might be a hard pivot. I don't know. You've mentioned how lonely sometimes it feels being a couple in recovery, being a couple who's working on our marriage, how few other couples there are that are sort of doing similar work to what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
And I think that the stuff that we kind of got in touch with and came up with words for within the last couple of years, I think is going on so rampantly among other married people who are in the aftermath of addictions being exposed, of infidelity, betrayal being exposed. It gives us the chance to shine a spotlight on the things that have been less than healthy all along, right? It's not that the exposure of this affair or this addiction or this particular betrayal event started our problems.
Right.
You know, this was the catalyst that kind of blew it all up. So what do you think, what keeps people from being willing to pop up the hood, look underneath it, give an honest look to not just what's presenting on the surface, and to say, like in our arguments, it's not about who said what. It's not about this. It's about what that prompted in me. It's easy for us to sit here at this perspective, you know, coming up on 16 years in recovery and 33 years of marriage, to say, well, that's what you do. But it's easy to miss when the stuff on the surface feels so much like the main story of what's going on.
Yeah. I think how everything kind of unfolds is it happens when it happens, you know? And I think what can be helpful for people is when we or any couple goes through something and they learn things, is you share it. And I'm not saying you have to be on a podcast or have a ministry like we do, but some way you're sharing, maybe in the recovery community if you have, a group that you go to or whatever. Because we had just a specific thing that happened that was nothing about addiction, nothing about you didn't relapse, none of that. Just got my anxious attachment blown way out of proportion, it seemed. And that led to us being introduced to the intensive that we went to that we knew nothing about before. So it wasn't even like all these years in recovery that we've been getting better. We've been working on things. We didn't know about this emotionally focused therapy that we did. We just didn't know. So it's not like we were refusing. So I think that's probably a lot of people. They don't know what would be helpful. And this may not be the thing that changes everybody's marriage the way it changed ours, but we both said it was life-changing.
Yeah, I think another thing that can be a hindrance in getting to a healthier place of identifying like this is what we want to be working on here is some of the early phase work that both partners have to do in recovery. If that's not done, then you've got this constant distraction in front of you. And so like for the recovering addict, if that's what you're dealing with, if you've got somebody who's never really gotten sober,
right.
If you've never worked towards discovering what your triggers are and how do you put things in place to help you experience sobriety, we say all the time, it's not all about sobriety. Sobriety is not the goal, but getting healthy and mature is the goal. Lack of sobriety keeps you from that. And so, I'm thinking about our experience and when you had that significant trigger that you were just referring to a couple of years ago. That means that we had been working recovery individually and together for 14 years at the time, free from relapse on my part. Yeah. Like I have been sober, have not been having that distraction to present to you or to me. Right. And it still took that long for us to realize that there was still some deeper work to do. We were still, I think, evaluating and interpreting what was going on from much more of a surface analysis. Yeah. Like
and me
it's
too.
About the things that you say, or it's about the tone that you have, or
I feel like it sounds like you just said, is that what you said? Which that's fine and that's healthy to do. But there is so much that just being healthily attached to each other and not just looking at how you attach to your caregivers, I didn't know was a thing, So I think a lot of couples, like you said, maybe he's not sober. If you weren't sober, or maybe you had sobriety, but then you kept, relapsing or whatever, slipping, it would be very difficult for me to go in and do work like that. And I don't know that many couples do because there wouldn't be the trust or the safety. So it could be that some husbands are doing the work and the wives don't want to do the work.
Right. And
heal.
That's some of the stuff that Carol Sheets was talking about a few episodes back when she was talking about safety and stabilization. Yeah. How a betrayed partner needs to feel safe, because when you come to realize that, oh my gosh, I've been sexually betrayed, the rug is pulled out from under you.
Yeah.
I mean, it is PTSD. It is producing all kinds of reactions in you that you didn't ask for, that you don't know what's going on. If a partner is not putting into her life, I'll say her, it's not just women, but his or her lives, the support that's going to help facilitate that growing sense of safety and stabilization, he or she is not going to be able to really safely and comfortably and without distraction look at, how am I showing up with maybe less health than I could? How's my backstory? How's my attachment style keeping me from showing up authentically and safely for my partner in the relationship?
And I have seen a lot of women over the years have said, like, either they knew about me, or maybe they even knew me, but they did not want to call me because I stayed married and we're still together, assuming that I was going to push them to do the same. And so it is encouraging to see my friends, though, pressing in, leaning in, and healing. And it's brutal. I mean, I was texting with one of them over Christmas, just checking in on her, and she was telling me, and I was just crying. I get a lump in my throat now just thinking about the pain that she's going through, because this is not the way she wanted her story to go. But she is still healing and growing, even though they're in a process of divorce. So, I mean, that's sad, but I guess I'm saying all that to say, like, we're talking about doing your work, but it doesn't, I think if you don't do your work, I don't know how you're going to have a healthy marriage. You may stay married, but I don't know how it's going to be healthy or grow if one or both aren't doing that work. But you don't have to stay married to also heal and see, good things happen.
So January 4th is our wedding anniversary. January 6th is my fan day anniversary. We've talked a lot over the years just about what effect that day has on each of us. It affects different people and different couples very differently.
Yeah.
I've always been a little bit surprised that I am much more aware of that day, and it occupies more of my thoughts than it does yours.
I think it's fair to say there are more years that I haven't thought about the fact that on January 6th, I am not thinking that this was the day I found out everything.
I wonder why that is.
I think it's because, full circle to our very opening about, does it really matter if it's on the day? I do think our actual anniversary is where I am thinking about it on our anniversary. Because, I think for me, this may not be other people, this is me. I remember Leonardo's, the Italian restaurant we were eating at. It was a Monday night. We were having a lovely meal. I don't remember having any hard conversation. You seemed normal. Everything was fine. The rolls, I remember the rolls were so good. And then the 6th was when everything blew up. So it's like, I don't know, for some reason, I'm thinking about it on our anniversary. And then on the 6th, I'm not thinking about it. That's a cool thing, I guess.
Yeah, I think that for the recovering addict, those anniversaries can be pretty meaningful because it's a reminder of just when everything that I had been working like a dog to try to keep from happening just blew up.
Yep.
Everything that I've been trying to control revealed itself to be out of control. Yeah. And so I think that just what it represents, it's like the sick feeling of the jig is up, it's all out. The explosion that I've been trying to avoid like the plague is about to happen. That's probably why for some of us that anniversary, hits pretty hard, and we can feel it coming. I think that what we've learned about how the body keeps the score and how trauma is stored in the body, even if you're the one who was the perpetrator, of the harm, it's still traumatic, when the secret that you've been carrying, that I was carrying for all those years, involuntarily came out. And so I think our bodies remember when that's coming around again. And so the holidays, Christmas and New Year's, like my body remembers what it was like trying to hold it all together, do the Christmas program at the church where I was on staff, and then the big emotional letdown. And then during the emotional letdown, I can remember making plans for acting out, right around the new year. And then right after that, getting caught. So I think my body just remembers like that's when this happened and this happened and this happened.
Well, and I just had a thought. We talk about illusion of control pre being exposed. Like you could control things that you did or didn't do. But when it all came out, that was where everybody else gets to now choose what they're going to do in light of this.
Right.
And that's where you probably, I imagine, feel the sense of that loss of control because you weren't really managing it before, but in a sense you were because nobody knew.
Well, I was definitely trying to control outcomes. The primary method of trying to control outcomes was don't let anybody who would be a decision maker know what's going on.
Right.
They can't give me a consequence if they don't know that there's a situation that deserves one.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So really a lot of trying to control other people, a lot of trying to control information, control the narrative. Yeah.
Which I'm kind of surprised when you talk about all the things leading up to being exposed that I'm kind of surprised that it didn't ruin Christmas for me because my body surely knows what's coming, remembering what was right around the corner after Christmas. And maybe it is how I cope. Like it's everything's magical. And if I can just play all the Christmas music and all the things and I don't think about the hard. I don't think I'm doing that, but maybe initially I did for sure.
And it's not always about, just the psychological and what's going on a psychological and emotional level.
Yeah.
There's a lot of redemption there too.
Yeah, that's true.
An awful lot of things around that season that have been redeemed. And I'm sure that's a lot of it too.
Well, and I know that also a lot of people have said to me that they wish they could go back to not knowing. And a lot of them know they don't want their marriage to go back to the way it was because it wasn't great. But just wanting to not know. And I know what they mean. I get it. But what we really want is that it never happened, that you didn't have this addiction because I don't want to not know. If
we really unpeel that onion and say, like, let's take a look at ignorance is bliss. Is that really true? It's not true. It's more comfortable in the short term. To not know means I don't have to deal with it.
Right.
But what it does is it robs me of experiencing the full range of my emotions.
Right. And being able to choose what I want to do in light of this information. And
we talked about that all the way back on the first episode when you had not that long ago come to realize how much of your choice, how much of your say I had taken away from you by what I concealed from you.
Right. And I think that for a long time, it's like I wouldn't allow myself to think that you are that person.
Yeah.
That would have taken those choices away because I don't see you that way. Because I didn't see, I saw the harshness and I saw over the years.
Well, I wasn't doing it in a nefarious way or for nefarious purposes. I wasn't doing it because I was some sadistic narcissist who was trying to ruin your life.
Right.
It was self-protection. All of the things that we talk about now that were so abusive, harmful towards you. And, basically taking even your sexual consent away because I would be acting out and then coming to you for sex and you couldn't give an informed yes or no because you didn't have the information.
Right.
None of that was me sitting around thinking, let me pull one over on her. It was, I'm just trying to hold things together.
Yeah.
I'm trying to keep my life from absolutely driving off of a cliff. And I can't add the element of her knowing any of this stuff right now. I had to live so compartmentalized so as to not let anything slip. I couldn't consider the full impact of that it was having on you because that would have been unsustainable.
That's something else people ask me, like, wasn't he thinking about me? I ask him, like, how could you do that when we just had this time or, we just had this great anniversary and I thought we had fun. And you can't think about the spouse when you're acting out, right? Because you would be
Well,
it would be hard to live with yourself. I mean, you're
it
not
was
like,
hard to
you
live with
know
myself.
what you're doing.
The
but
longer
you're-
it went on, the harder it became to retain that compartmentalization.
Yeah.
The harder it was to not think about what I was doing to you and to me and to us and to our family. It's without, going too specific or too graphic or anything, like it's really hard to act out when you're just trying to emotionally hold it together.
Right.
Because you've got a voice screaming in your head, what are you doing? Stop, turn around, leave, quit. And it's pretty hard to focus on anything sexual, which is, sexual context. It's not supposed to be filled with guilt.
Right.
It's not supposed to be filled with shame and secrecy and hiding and, making sure that you don't get caught. That's everything that's antithetical to an intimate, letting yourself fully be known, letting yourself be fully exposed, trusting sexual relationship with a person that you've committed your life to. That's not what was happening in addiction, you know?
Right.
And so to try to be simulating something that's built on intimacy when there is no intimacy, and then to have my conscience, the Holy Spirit screaming, run away, awful.
Yeah.
And thank God it was awful. Thank God that the longer it went on, the harder it was to act like this was not out of control.
Yeah.
To act like this was not something that was eventually going to catch up with and destroy my life.
And you knew it wasn't working, but you didn't know any solution.
No, and I think back to before I had crossed, the flesh barrier line. Before I had crossed that line, I was able to sustain the illusion that this isn't out of control because at least I haven't, acted out with anybody. And I perceive that a lot of the people that I interact with in recovery who haven't crossed that line or who haven't crossed maybe some of the significant lines that come just as a part of escalation, it's really easy to say, well, I mean, I know it's not good, but it could be a lot worse. And at least I'm not yada, yada, yada. In that sense, coming up on the anniversary of Fan Day is really good. It's kind of, it provides for me one of the same things that going to a recovery meeting does. Sitting in that room and talking about what life was like, what happened, and what it's like now. And if I don't remember how things were when I was trying to manage life on my own, it stops being so devastating.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't ever want to think, well, maybe it wasn't so bad. So in that sense, I think that's one of the things that for me is really good about that anniversary.
I can help remind you if you need.
Oh, thank you.
Help.
So far, I haven't needed it.
No.
What's it like for you, just even these last few minutes, just sitting there hearing me talk about kind of those last days of acting out before Fan Day?
It's interesting because I feel absolutely nothing in my body. It's like you're just telling a story. I can't fathom you doing those things the way you are now. Even in your unhealthy state, I did not imagine you doing those things. But I'm at a point where I really don't feel a lot of emotion other than gratitude and praise God we're not there. And I'm glad that came out. But it's not, I don't want to say I'm not sad about it, but I don't feel sad anymore about it because it's like I'm sad that it happened. I'm sad that you went years like that, living like that. I know the way we related to each other when we were day-to-day parenting, I think it was fine. But when we were, not in good places, I don't think we showed up safe for each other at all. So all of that almost makes me more sad in some ways than everything that happened. When I think about those two people showing up that way, that is sad to me.
Well, you took adequate time to grieve and to feel all the emotions about what you discovered that I had done.
Yeah.
And in a sense, the work that you decided to do to heal from that is a partial explanation of how you can show up today and say what you just said. I feel whenever I think back on my active addiction days, I feel like I'm remembering like a movie that I watched. You know, it doesn't feel, it feels like another person.
Yeah.
And I guess, you know, one of the things that I hope is encouraging about that to people who are listening who may be still in the midst of it or maybe in the early aftermath of it, and it just seems so vivid, is keep showing up to the daily work. One day at a time, you will be moving in a direction where hopefully one day you can look back and say, that doesn't even feel like my life. You know, that feels like something that I just heard about.
Yeah.
You know, when I hear people who share their stories with me and then I share my story, it kind of feels similar. Like, yeah, they're just stories, but it doesn't have that visceral, it doesn't take me back to that anymore.
Same. Yeah. But I was thinking that the first few years, I think, I was so mad. And then not, you know, I'd be mad and then I'd be really sad, crying, and then I'd be mad. I mean, and I did that a lot. I think we both don't really remember it as much, but I know I did. It was awful. And I felt like when I would go out in public, looking around at everybody and all the men, if they were with a girl going, I bet you don't know what he's doing, or I wonder if he's done this to her, you know, kind of. And
I know it was really hard for you to go to weddings for a while.
Oh, I hated weddings. Still, they're kind of hard because I know we say our vows and we commit to live them out, but that didn't happen in our marriage, you know, fully. But I think even in the last 5 years, there have been a number of times where I got triggered from nothing, maybe related. I just had a flashback. It was like I couldn't breathe. I cried so hard. I didn't. And it was like, I don't know that I can ever not have this happen.
Yeah. And that was really hard when those times happen. Really hard
More
for
recent.
me too, because that is the type of reaction that I spent so much time and energy trying to keep from happening in you.
Yeah.
Because of the way that it makes me feel.
Right.
Right? Because when you have that type of reaction, I feel like a sack of crap and I feel guilty and I feel rejected and all the unpleasant things. And yet there's nothing going on in those moments that shouldn't be going on. And so the work that we've done in this last few years to be able to show up authentically, that means that I'm learning how to let you be sad. And you're learning how to let me be sad.
Yeah.
And just say, will you let me know if you need anything from me? You know, what can I do? Do you need me to hold you? Do you need me to give you some space? You know, and that feels like sounds like a foreign language when you're not there yet.
Yeah.
And I want to name that for people who are listening who are not as far down the road as we are for a couple of reasons. I mean, one is I don't want to be humble bragging or making it sound like we've got everything figured out, because we don't.
I mean, the last couple of years when I got got the anxious attachment stuff just like blew up in our faces, it was rough.
Yeah.
It was hard.
We have learned a lot, but some of that recent.
Yeah.
So we don't ever quit learning. But another reason why I want to just point that out for people who may be closer to the starting line than we are is just to give you some hope.
Yeah.
You know, keep showing up for the work. And it looks different for every person. It looks different for every couple. But there are some concepts, some principles that generally tend to work if you surrender to them and if you show up and if you show up with a desire for understanding and for empathy and for, I think, getting in touch with not only what you have been through and bring into the relationship, but what your partner has been through and brings into the relationship. Something, you know, going back to what you said near the beginning about when the little girl shows up. We've talked, you know, we've had some experience with IFS, internal family systems, which is a mode of therapy where you recognize that you're made up of many parts, and some of them are older, some of them are younger. They're all trying to protect you in different ways. With the two of us, and I think that with other couples that we talk to, are able to say, you know, think about a recent argument and picture the room. You know, picture you and your partner in the room where you were, the look on your face, the body language, the tone of voice, the things that you were saying, the arguments that you were making. And now imagine if right next to you is an 8-year-old version of you. And right next to her is an 8-year-old version of her. And there are emotionally 8-year-old children who are desperately trying to claw their way to safety. If we understand that behind so much conflict, that's what's going on, is we just want to be safe. We want to know that our needs are going to be met, that we're protected, that you are not going to destroy me. And I want you to know that I'm not here to destroy you. When we can recognize how much of what gets in the way of understanding is self-protection, then we can be compassionate for ourselves, we can be compassionate for our partner, and we can really get under the surface and get to the heart of what's going on. You know, back to our intensive that we did and the continuing work that we do with our therapist, how many times, it's not really about that, you know? Or, hey, we talk about something that was a catalyst and we never, ever get back to the thing that was said. Because the thing that was said doesn't matter. All it did was release the hounds, you know, emotionally. And being able now, having the tools and the skills to look under the surface more than just on the surface has been so good.
And I think it's exhausting doing a lot of the work. But now I think some of our conversations that would have before gone so sideways and taken hours, I think we're just able to kind of ask a few questions or name a few things, and then I think we move on. I can't even remember now the last time we did have a little conversation to work through. I don't even remember. Like, we went through the whole Christmas holidays, and except for me slamming doors, putting the stuff away, I don't think we had anything. It's not that I never get annoyed or I never feel stupid or think you have a tone. I think constantly I'm evaluating things that I'm feeling. But I guess the difference is, like, we're checking in so much more. We're on the same team. We're reminding ourselves, you are not the enemy. Nobody's the enemy. I'm not saying other people are the enemy, but I think it just helps.
About annoyance, I've noticed, and we haven't necessarily talked about this, but you just kind of gave reference to it. It's not frequent, but it is regular that I will feel annoyance towards you, right? And you feel it towards me.
Let's name the things.
But I think that the thing that's different for me is when I feel annoyed, the narrative, the story in my head for so long was, she is doing that annoying thing. And if she would quit doing that annoying thing, everything would be fine. But now the narrative is, okay, I'm feeling annoyed. I would prefer she wasn't doing that, but what I'm feeling seems disproportionate to what she's doing. So maybe this is as much about me as anything that she's doing. So if she would do that, I might still have whatever's going on in my emotions that heighten my tendency to become irritable. So now it's like, and if there's something that you're doing that really I do find annoying, like, I can tell you and I can ask you, like the seatbelt thing before the dinger starts happening. Our car, if you don't fasten the seatbelt within a certain number of seconds, then the beep starts, and it'll beep 6 times slow, and then it'll start beep, 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 beeping. And so, like, I have conditioned myself. I get in the car, sometimes before I close the door, my seatbelt's on. And you come into the car sometimes with like 8 things that you're juggling conceptually and sometimes physically. Like, you'll have a bunch of stuff in your hands,
purse,
and
my
it'll
phone,
take you longer to get out the
Bible.
door. And so you're getting in the car and you have 7 different threads of thought. And so we start going down the road and it's dinging and you're not even aware of it. So a while back, I just said, would you please put your seatbelt on quicker?
That did not go well immediately.
Not immediately.
I did not like it.
But it became something that we could talk about. It was not an irritant that was completely without merit. And I was also allowing myself to get more irritated than I needed to allow. And so sometimes I can just sit in the driveway and wait for you to get settled before I start moving the car. Because if the car's not moving, the bell's not dinging, you know? And one time I did that and he was like, why aren't we driving? And I just kind of looked at your seatbelt. So there's so many more things that I guess the point is that we both have access to now.
Because those are the kinds of things I think that can break up a marriage, because you're not keeping tabs on things. And so it's not about the seatbelt or the trash that I take out and forget to put the bag back in the trash can.
Or how you squeeze the toothpaste, or which direction you do the toilet paper roll.
We could go on and on and on. So it's not about those things, but because people don't get to the deeper things, that it is about that, like for them. And we have a number of things as we're getting older, I think, are we just being more honest about things? I know I am probably saying more. Well, both of us, for different reasons, didn't say things. Like, I didn't want you to be mad at me. So if you did something that annoyed me, when you crack your eggs to make breakfast and the goo is still on this counter, I'm like, wipe the goo off the counter. But I mean, I don't remember to put the trash bag in the can, and then Greg comes and throws something in there and there's no bag in there. It's like we both do things that, should they be annoying? Probably not, but we're human. And so
they're allowed to be annoying.
They're allowed to be annoying. And it's what we do with it. I think, like you said, it sure seems like I have a lot of heat behind my annoyance. So, like, why am I so mad at that?
Well, the thing that to me keeps coming up, and maybe this is a good thought to finish on, when there's annoyance, when there's conflict that I'm noticing, is my default to focus on what you're doing wrong?
Yeah.
Or is my default to say, that's stirring something up for me, I wonder why that is? Because if something you do, I just get all bent out of shape, it's because I had an expectation for you to do something else, and I needed you to do that something else in order for me to be okay.
Right.
What's that about? And so now, if you do something that I find annoying, okay, I get to find that annoying. I also get to be curious about it and say, is it about the thing, or is it about what it's bringing up in me? And that's a really interesting opportunity for me to grow. And also, it may be an opportunity for me to say, hey, I have a request for you. Could you get buckled a little faster? Because I can do my work and still find it a little bit annoying that you can tune that noise out and I can't.
Yeah.
It's not a one or the other. We are working together. I'm trying to understand you. I'm trying to understand myself. And I'm trying to show up with curiosity and kindness and compassion in this relationship, rather than to expect you to do everything my way just so that it's easier.
And I was thinking about, like, another thing we've kind of talked about, and now I think we fight to see who can change the toilet paper the fastest, because there would be like 4 squares left, and you would say, like,
it's not done.
You would leave it on there then, or if it's empty maybe, and you're like, why didn't you change it? Well, now we both should, like, change it so that the other one can't say anything. But I'm thinking, okay, if it's empty, whoever sees it, just put the new roll on there. Or if you see the trash can's empty, well, put a bag in there. There's just kindnesses that you can do, but it is also okay to ask somebody.
All the things you're talking about now, for me, if I'm taking responsibility for my emotional state, if you do everything exactly the way I want you to, it's easy for my emotions to be regulated.
Right.
But if you don't do any of the things that I would prefer, it's still my responsibility to seek emotional regulation. And as long as I'm going through life blaming you for how I feel, I'm not learning the skills and I'm not exercising the agency to do my part. And so my part can be having a conversation that you may not like what I have to say, when I ask something of you. But it's also my part to just say, my gosh, the things that I would tend to make a big deal out of, none of them are big deals.
Yeah.
And if I realize how few things I've made a big deal about are actually big deals, then I'm able to enjoy you and I'm able to enjoy time with you. So all that to say, as we're approaching these anniversaries, I feel much more relaxed and at peace and calm and safe with you than I used to.
Yeah. Yeah. Same.
And I'd love to see that continue.
Well, and I think for me, in a different way, the safety is almost, I feel more safe because I'm actually not relying on you as much, because I'm paying attention more to me. You aren't supposed to fix everything and be my full sense of security. My friends have a part in that. The Lord, of course, is the ultimate one who I can feel safe with, regardless of what's going on.
That sounds like taking pressure off of me.
Yeah, yeah. So
and I like it.
I don't know. I feel very relaxed. Same.
Well, happy anniversaries.
Happy anniversaries.
I love you.
Love you.
Excited for another year. You and me, another year of Awaken, another year of this podcast.
Such a great time.
Well, thanks everybody for sitting in on this conversation with us. We hope you have a very happy new year. and hope that your 2025 will be an experience of you discovering and moving towards what you really want. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
We'd love to hear from you. If you have questions, feedback, topics you'd like to hear us talk about on the show, click the Send Us a Message link in the show notes of any episode.